Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm going to change my name so everyone can see what I'm talking about. My name is Katie. I'm so excited to talk to you today and go through this. As we mentioned, you can keep your cameras on if you'd like. That's wonderful. But I know a lot of us are working or on a lunch break or driving a car. So take care of yourself. Hi, Jason. Thanks for parking and not not driving too wildly. So here is what I'd like you to do what I say, computer. Thank you. Okay, so here is what our plan is for today. We'll be I'll do an introduction of myself. We're going to talk about the census, what the census is. Then we're going to talk about the American Community Survey. And then we're going to spend most of it talking about finding data, because this is the first part of our grant writing month in conjunction with the Secretary of State has a lot of stuff going on as well. But from Literacy Works, we have these 3 trainings, and this one is how to find data. So a lot of grant funders, including the Secretary of State, want data for your grant proposals. They want to know who you're serving and where they live and what languages they speak. And you find that in the census or the American Community Survey. So we're going to talk about how, just letting in some more people, we're going to talk about how to find that data and then how you can keep track of it so you don't have to find it every single year. Hopefully that makes it a little easier for you. And then we'll have some reflections at the end. So just a few things before we start. So there's a lot of text on these slides. There's videos. There's a lot of stuff we're not going to be using today because we're doing a live demonstration. We're going to go through it and practice it together. But I made these slides this way so that when I send them to you afterwards, you can review by watching a video tutorial, you can review by reading the steps, or you can review by looking at the pictures, or all 3. So it's a way for you to take this document and use it again. So if you're like, wait, I didn't see that video, or I'm taking this, don't worry. We're just going to go through it together, and it can be a lot. So let it wash over you. And then I'm always here for questions and things like that. And we're also going to be going a little bit quickly today because we don't have a lot of time. We are going to only one website, but we're going to be flipping around in there. So if you are on a phone, a laptop, you're driving, and you're just like, I can't really engage with that right now, that's okay. So that's what the video tutorials are for, and you can watch us do it. But that's kind of what's happening now because the information is on the census website, so we have to get familiar with the platform. But again, we can go over this many times. And this is a side note, but I also wanted to mention that at Literacy Works, we know that grant writing is very problematic. We feel very strongly that it should all be general operating and it should be easier than this. And so it's not at the moment. And so we're teaching you strategies to deal with it in a complicated way, but we hope that it gets easier, and we'll continue to fight that way. And then we won't have to have this conversation anymore. But in the meantime, let's talk about how to find some data. And we talked about these tutorials. So I will give a little bit more information there. So for me, if you haven't already, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat with your name, any pronouns you'd like to share, and organization where you are working. And then, what you hope to learn today. So again, my name is Katie. I am the Community Literacy Program Director at Literacy Works, and I use they and them pronouns. As the Community Literacy Program Director, I get to do the trainings like this one, or I get to plan them like our tutor training, our tutor essentials training, or I get to hire great trainers to do the work for me. So this time it's me, and that is what I'm excited to talk to you all today. So I see in the chat we have lots of people from all over. Thank you so much for being here. Highland Community College, McHenry County College, Waukegan Public Library, Indo-American Center, yeah, Ethiopian. Community Association, yes, Morton College. We got all over the place. Family Legacy Foundation, great. Parkland College, welcome everybody. Awesome. Oakton College, yeah. Okay, great. I'm so glad. And Lasse, I'm so glad I saw a lot of you in here. I'm so glad you could join us. Great. So my camera will do that periodically, and I'm working on trying to figure it out. So if I get stuck that way and I don't notice, someone can put it in the chat for me. So let's keep rolling. let's talk about the census. Also, I wanted to mention that because we're a pretty big group today, let's just keep our voices, we'll be muted, and then we can always communicate in the chat. Otherwise, it might get a little wild. So we can do it that way, still letting people in. Okay, let's talk about the census. So for those that remember the census, we just did one in 2020, and not a lot of people remember it, but we remember it at Literacy Works because we were doing a lot of work with the census, and the pandemic made everything very complicated, as you can imagine. So the census happens every 10 years, and it counts every person, every household in the United States. That's the purpose of it. It's supposed to count everybody, and it's an actual count. It's not an estimate. So there's only 9 questions on the census forms, and these are the questions. If you remember completing it in 2020, you probably did it online, or maybe you saw me in front of, the Cermak grocery store. I was there with a table. But if you completed this, they were counting this is the information they were counting. So a lot of this information is actually not helpful for our grants. They don't really, ethnicity and race maybe, but we don't need date of birth. We don't really need gender. We don't really need to know what kind of house they live in. So the census doesn't actually give us a lot of information. But the good news is there are other purposes for the census. So we're going to talk about the American Community Survey. So the census is really important because it really gives us, it shows how many people we have in an area, and that shows how many representatives we can have. And anytime that we don't complete the census, or whole neighborhoods turn out very low numbers to complete the census, like there were several examples within Chicago of neighborhoods that just didn't complete the census. And so the data showed that there were very few people living there. So resources were cut, representatives were cut. All of these things were cut because on paper, there were no people in the neighborhood, but in real life, there were a lot of people. So the census is really important, and we did a lot of work, Literacy Works did, and a lot of other organizations did work in 2020 to get as many people counted as possible, especially those people that feel a little bit nervous about filling out forms because they need to be counted too. So the census is used in funding. So obviously we're using the census and census data to write the Secretary of State grant or to write other grants. So we need it accurate, we need it up to date. And that's what the Census Bureau can give us. Completing the census is also really big because everyone gets to be counted, documented, undocumented. Every kind of person gets to be counted and say, I live here, look at me. And that's really important. And even if it's a small gesture and we're just a drop in a huge sea of people in the United States, it's really important to get everybody's voices counted. So I'm a census convert. I thought it was boring. I didn't even remember taking it. I never remembered completing it. And then in 2018, I started working on this project, 2019. And then I was like, oh, I didn't know how great the census was. So I wanted to ask the group, if you're able to add some thoughts in the chat, what are some of the reasons? So the 2020 census was very confusing for a lot of people. And I wanted to ask, I've already mentioned the pandemic, but what are some of the reasons, if you can remember, from the 2020 census? Why was there so much confusion around the census? Does anybody remember the issues there? Yeah, I don't know if someone wanted to add. Yeah, so literacy, DuPage, immigration status, undocumented. Yeah, Allison, concerns with immigration. Yes. Daniel, you're not sure? That's okay. But it was confusing. So there was as you can see on the questions, there are no questions about documentation. Oops. We could see here, there's nothing about documentation here. These are the questions. But the Trump administration started saying that they were going to add a documentation question and just kind of spread that information around, but that was never going to happen, and it didn't happen, right? So, but everybody kind of got it in their head, if I complete this form and I'm not documented, then I'm going to get in trouble and something's going to happen to me. So there was a Census Bureau did a lot of work. who would be counted plus wanted the counting ended. Yes, Tom, and yeah, he wanted it ended early too, right? So a lot of things contributing to the confusion of this count. So people, even the, I'm giving away gift cards for people to complete the census, and they're afraid that they're going to be outed of their document. I have the Census Bureau created all these kinds of documents and trainings to say, no, we don't talk to your landlord. No, we don't talk to anyone. We just want to count you here. But that chaos created so much. Just the rumor of this happening caused so much chaos. And this is the data we have for the next 10 years. So what do you think is the impact of that kind of confusion on a census year? How will that affect our data for the next 10 years? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Like who is not going to be counted? Who's going to be counted? How will this affect who we see in this? Mandy says it hurts the communities that need the funding and support the most. Yeah. Leonis, a lot of the underserved populations may have gone uncounted. Yeah. So when we talk about census being used for representation, for funding, what areas need more money? Sunny says communities of color, those who are unauthorized, affects resource distribution. Look at your great ideas. Power allocation, yes. Yes. Okay, Danielle, I see you becoming a census convert as well. Yes, counted in the shadows, and they're more invisible. Yes, communities not getting what they need because it counts. Exactly. So now we're going to have to look at the census data and say, it's not perfect. So we need to think about different ways to use data, even when we know it's not completely accurate. So we will talk a little bit more about this in data in narrative training in the next one that we're going to do next week. We're going to talk about some other places you can find data. Today we're focusing on the census, but we can see already it's not the end all information that we thought it was, or that funders think it is when they say, give us the census data. You can't just give them the data. We have to explain more about it because we know it's not true. But now you guys are all pumped for the next one in 2030. We can't wait for the census. The problem with the census every 10 years is everybody forgets about it. And then 10 years, we all forgot what we did. So we'll try to remember this time. Okay, so let's keep going. So the census is great and awesome and tells us how many people we have. But the American Community Survey gives us a lot more information. And this is where most of the information for our grants are going to come from. So this survey happens every single year throughout the United States. So you might have never gotten this survey before, or maybe your parents got it once when you were a kid. You could possibly get one at some point in your life, just based on where you are. This counts the characteristics. So remember, the census only had 9 questions. This one has a ton of questions. This one has all the questions where we're finding out languages, children, income levels, education levels. All of this stuff is in the American Community Survey. And these are estimates. So remember, the census is actual count of how many people. But the American Community Survey kind of drops off the survey in pockets of the United States and then makes these trends and makes estimates based on the information they have. It would be impossible for us to keep up with all this information on an accurate, exact level to talk to we would have to do surveys every single day of our lives. So this estimate kind of gives us things to work with. So when we talk about census data, we're usually talking about the American Community Survey, especially when we talk about our grant stuff. Yes, so the American Community Survey is every year, but it doesn't mean you'll get it every year. It just means somebody is getting a survey every year. And I've never gotten one, I don't think. And maybe I did. I think there's a last years when I was in college and after college where I feel like I just threw away mail that was addressed from the government. So who knows? But we have when we start to look at the community survey, we have a 1-year estimate and a multi-year estimate. This is a complicated way of just saying that we have lots and lots of data, and some of it is newer than others. So when we think about data that we want the newest data. we don't want really old data because that's not as accurate. So we might be drawn to this 1 year estimate. The problem is it's only 1 year in one little pocket of the country. So it is the newest data, but it's not available for small service areas. And that's what we are looking for, because we're looking for the data that's around our organization. So, and it's not really reliable with trends because it's just 1 year. So even though we're looking for the newest data, we're actually not going to look at the 1 year estimate because it just isn't enough information. I actually don't, I'm wondering if anybody knows what we use this for, maybe just because it's there. But thinking about the multi-year estimate, when we have a 3 or 5 year estimate, this is where we want to be, because this gives us new and older data, gives us more accurate information, and gives us a longer time so that we can see some trends. So we might not be able to tell what's going on with language use. I've never did a survey or a census. Do they only interview who they want? No, that's a great question. For the census, it's everyone. It should have been mailed to you, and then people were hounding you on the street to complete it. Maybe they missed you, but everyone is supposed to complete the census. And the American Community Survey is not who they want, but they have a system of how they spread it around the country. So it's not like they do California 1 year and Washington, D.C. another. They, or like a city or a state, they do a bunch of different kinds of people every year. So the chances are you'll get one once in your lifetime. It might have, at least, might have happened at some point in your life when you just, you weren't paying attention to the mail or went to the wrong address or something. But it's possible. Okay, so going back to this, multi-year is much more accurate. It gives us more information, and it helps us have a better understanding of where we're going with the data. Here's a complicated form as a gift from the Census Bureau. Thank you for your beautiful slide. Just so you can look at what they're doing. So you can see that when we get a 5 year estimate, you can see here, it's all areas. So that means our really small tracts that we're going to talk about, those are included, but they might not be included in the 3 year or the 1 year estimate because they're such small communities, especially when we're triangulating and stuff. And we'll talk about that. So all that to say, we're just going to look for a 3 year or a 5 year estimate as close to now as we can. So if we're thinking now, it's 2023. Oh, I was going to say 2022. And so we're probably looking at like 2020 as our earliest data we can find. Maybe 2021, if we have something specific. So are there any questions about this so far? This is just kind of prepping you. Anything we want to add to this conversation before we move on? Okay. So we got to find this data. It's there. We know it's there, but it's hard to find. So let's talk about finding it. So if any of you remember, there used to be a tool called the American Fact Finder. It was cool. It was easy to use, but it is no longer there. And instead they updated their census website. So it's much more easy. It's much easier to navigate. And I started this training in 2019, and the website is so much better. So it's only getting better and easier to use, which is great. So maybe putting me out of a job, and that's just fine with me, to get us an easier navigatable I want to make sure that it's showing this. Okay, great. So this is the website. Jason, did you have a question? Oh no, okay.
No, it was on my car speaker and it went off, so I'm trying to get it back on. That's what I'm trying to do.
Oh yeah, no worries. Okay, so I put this link in the chat. You're free to just go and play around with it now if that's something that works for you. We're going to go through it together, but that's the website that we're going to be using today. So this is the website now that we're going to spend most of our time in. This is what the census has to offer us. So can you make it big again? Let's see. No. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we have here, we can type in anything we want. Try searching for poverty. Try searching for whatever. You can type anything you want in that box. So what we're going to do is we're going to start talking about topics. So the first thing we can do is, again, this is going to be your resource, so you can watch a tutorial on how to do this if you get lost today. But we're going to go to this website, and I want you to search for, we're going to search for Chicago, Illinois, or your city, and then some kind of topic that you're looking for. So for example, if you wanted to look for Chicago, you would type in Chicago, Illinois, and I'll show you. We would just type right here, Chicago, Illinois. And what did I say? Education. So if I just type in a city, a state, and a topic, it gives me a lot of information, like this, just right at the top. Bachelor's degree or higher in Chicago. Great, we have that information very quickly. And now we have all these tables we can look at. We can look at birthplace by education, geographical mobility in the past year by educational attainment. You can look at everything. It's just all crisscrossed into different tables. And that's if we're going to be searching by topic. So I want you all now to, we're going to do an activity if you're able to, man, this camera is really driving me crazy today. If you're able to participate, great. If you're not, that's okay. That's what we have all these other things for. But what I would like you to do is on your own, go to this website. So I'm going to put it again in the chat. So if you're able to access it, I want you to go to that website, and I want you to type in the search bar here, in the search bar, I want you to type in Chicago, Illinois, and median income. So in the future, you can type your own cities, but what I want you to do for this exercise is type in Chicago, Illinois, median income. And I want you to select this table at the top. So I'll show you what I mean. Chicago, Illinois, median income. And I'm asking you to click on this S1901, this very first one, income in the past 12 months. And I want you to click on that. Click on the table so it opens, and then you can see this information. I want you to start to look at this graph and use it to answer the questions on the next slide. So I'm going to give you a second to get there. Please make yourself known in the chat or with an emoji if you need some help. Otherwise, you're free to.
I have a question.
Yeah, Kayla.
So in looking at this estimate, is that total number, that 1 million that's at the top, that's the sample size that they took? Or is this all the complete like census data?
So you're talking about this on this table, this 1,100,000, this one. Okay, yes. So this is not the census data, it's American Community Survey. So yes, that's everybody that answered this question.
Oh, just the people that answered this question.
Yes.
I was like, I feel like we're missing a lot of people.
Yes, we are missing a lot of people. So that's a good question, but that is the amount of people. So that's not everyone in the United States. That's anyone that got the survey in the past 12 months. So if you're there, I'd like the activity to be, and I see some people can't participate, that's okay. No stress there. So if you're able, I would love for you to, you know what, we have so many people on here. If you're able to participate in the annotations, great. If you are not, that's okay. But what I want you to do is look at the graph here at the table, and I want you to answer the question. What is the percentage of households, what percentage of households have less than $10,000 in income? If you are able to use, if you know how to use annotations, go for it. If you don't, you can put your answer in the chat. 9.3, 9.3, 9.3. That's what I'm seeing so far. Oh, and we got, oh yeah, I was like, those are still there. So we found that by looking less than $10,000, and here we have the estimates. And you can see that they have households, they have families, and they have married couples. So when you're asking for households, you have to make sure you're in the right column. So all of you found it right away, less than 10,000 households, 9.3. Okay, what about, clear all the drawings. What about this one? What is the median? Yikes. What is the median income for families? So if you know how to use annotations, please do. Otherwise, you can write it in the chat, or you can just be proud of yourself at home. So we got 81, we got 2 for 81,000, 1 for 66. Any other answers on this one? So we're looking for the median income for families. 81, 81. Okay, let's see. So remember, we have to look for families. We have to go down and look for median income. So we need to make sure we're going here. And then we have to look over at families for the estimate. So for those of you that saw 66,000, you're in the right lane, wrong column. This is for households, and this one is for families. So just kind of getting you a little bit more familiar with the space. And let's do one more. Can you explain the difference between households and families? Yes. So households are people, the way that they divide them are families are people, adults with children, or a adult with a child. And households are people that live together. So that includes children, but that could be roommates, that could be just people that live together that aren't a family or aren't related. So it's a weird distinction. Well, it's only a weird distinction when we talk about income, but when we talk about, it's divided for when we talk about poverty levels for children. So that would be the difference. So if you're thinking about, you know, talking about your family literacy program, talking about family information is going to be good for that, as opposed to households, although all the information is the same if you have somebody living in the household. Does that make a little bit more sense, Sunny? Okay. Okay, great. So, and let's just do one more. So how many total households were counted in this data? We already gave this one away. Are dependents considered family or dependents under 18? Any dependent considered a family or dependents under 18? Dependents under 18, but families can be, that's such a good question. So now I'm going to write it down and I'm going to look it up, and I will include it in the follow-up. So I want to make sure, I want to get the definition of families and what that means. Thank you for asking that, Anne. Okay, so this one, how many households were counted in this survey? 1 million, yes. So that's where we looked at the beginning when we asked, and how many people completed this survey. This many families, and this many married couples. So we can see it's not everybody, but it's a certain amount, but you can find all of this. So the reason that I had you go through this, even if you were like, this was really boring, this is very obvious, this is what the census, this is what the data is going to look like. So getting familiar with these charts, well, they can seem really overwhelming at first, and there's lots of ways to organize it and play with these charts. I don't use that myself, and I don't know if it's super necessary once you have the line, but you can customize these charts to make them work for you, but they all look like this. So there's a lot of stuff in here that we don't need to look at. So really honing in on what you want to focus on. Like if you want to talk about households, just people in your neighborhood, that's what you look at. So don't worry about families. Just narrow in the area that you want to look at, and then it's less overwhelming. And for a lot of this stuff, when we think about it, it's like people over 18 are the people that we're going to be looking at, not children, not this, not this, not this. We're just going to be looking at people over 18, 25 and older, usually as a category too. So when we think about data, one of the biggest things is that there's too much. And so people don't know where to start. I'm just writing down this note so I can send that to you. Okay. So what I want to do now is I'm going to give you some time to work on your own. And I know that some of you can't participate right now, but we'll just work on this. Will the search button break down by Chicago neighborhoods? No, Rich. So that's why I'm going to show you how to do that by track in a second. It doesn't give us neighborhood data. Okay, so I want you all to take a second to goof around in the website. I'm going to put it in the chat again for those of you that oh wait, I have it in the chat right now, just in case. So please, we will be working on there. I want you to pick a category, and this could be a category you really want to work on for your own grant, so it can be real practice. So type in your city, your state, Illinois, probably. Type in your city, your state, and then your topic. What do you want to focus on for your data? And you can, here are some examples, but you can put in whatever you want and see what you get. And I want to give you a little while to do that. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. So we'll go till 1:37 of just playing around in the website. And this is your chance to ask me, like, wait, I don't know what website you're talking about, or can you go through the process again? Now feel free to ask me. Otherwise, just go ahead and play around. Think of some stuff you're really going to use in your grant writing. Okay, I have a request to go through it again. I'm going through it. Okay, so first, everybody needs to go to this website that I put in the chat, data.census.gov. And once you get there, this search bar, you're going to type in your city, your state, and a topic that you want to search for. So here are some ideas of things that people have searched for in the past, but you can choose anything you want and you'll just type it here. So for example, if I wanted to type in Danville, Illinois language. Oops, did it do it? No. So if I type in Danville, Illinois language, this is what I get. I can see some information. I see some tables here. This is where I will be. So for all of us doing ESL programs, they want to know how many people speak English in your neighborhood. If the percentage is 70% of the people in your neighborhood speak English, it's hard to say, I mean, it's not as hard to say. You can say it. People will still need English support there, but it's easier to show that, oh, we have a really big need for this program because we have such low numbers of people that speak English or speak another language at home. So in Danville, it looks like languages other than English spoken at home is 7%. But in Chicago, for example, we changed the city. It's a better website, but it's not fast. So now if we compare Danville to Chicago, we see that in Chicago, almost 35% of households speak a language other than English. So using that kind of information, you can find your city and state. Now that you've had a little bit of time to play around with it, does anybody have any questions? So the topic portion should reflect one of the 9 questions asked in the census. No, because, well, it can if you want to do something like gender or age. But if you can ask any question, because this census website is the census data and the American Community Survey. So the American Community Survey is all of those questions about employment, education, all of that. It's all mixed together on this website, though. Yes, Sunny, they do. they disaggregate data around race and ethnicity. I believe you can get pretty specific, but I know that a lot of, well, when we talk about specific language, like really specific languages, they don't break down, like it'll say like Asian languages, which is problematic, obviously, because there's lots and lots of languages there. And they do make they're lumping together a lot of categories. So there's some finagling to do, but for the most part, they do break it down. Okay. Any other questions on just how to get there and how to do any of this? Okay. And if they do come up, we're still here. We're still together. We can still work on it. So if this is brand new to you, then it's going to take a minute to kind of play around and figure out what works for you. But the idea of this is that you don't have to do this every single year. You know what's going to happen next, and we can kind of plan and make your grant writing a little bit easier. So this is exactly a perfect segue from Rich's question of, will the search be broken down by neighborhood in Chicago? No. So for those of you that are living in a city outside of Chicago or an area outside of Chicago, sometimes it's easier because you can just kind of talk about your whole city. In Chicago, for those organizations there, it's difficult because Chicago's a really big city. So it's hard to tell, it's hard to make an argument that we should have this tiny program in Albany Park because Chicago is this way, right? So it doesn't necessarily affect it. So we need to get more specific. But those outside Chicago can also use this method to make it as specific as possible. Why not? You can get, definitely there's big cities where there's populations different on, there's different sides of a thing. Like we might think of, a city like Champaign, and it's a big city, but we have, this neighborhood is very specific. So you can get specific anywhere you want to, but thinking about Chicago specifically. So when the Secretary of State grant asks for data, they're not saying, tell me all the people that need to learn to read in Illinois, because you're not going to be able to serve all those people. And that's not the point. The purpose is, who are you going to serve? Those are the people they want to know about. So that's when we need to get specific. So this big topic stuff, and we're going to talk about this more in our next training on how to use this data in a narrative, but with a big topic stuff like education and language use is a great place to start, but then we can keep going into the specifics of our neighborhood, of the area that we are serving. So one of the ways we can do that is thinking about census tracts. So first we have to find the tracts, then we're going to search by tracts. So first I'll explain this. So we're going to go back to the website. Again, here are the steps. One by one steps, so you can look at this later if you get lost, but we're going to go through it together. So the first thing we're going to do is go to this website. We'll just keep using Chicago as an example. I'm going to turn my camera off while I do this because it's having a problem. And we'll put in education for this example. Feel free to use whatever you'd like. So the next thing we're going to do is, when we get to this page, this is where we were. We saw all these tables. On the left-hand side, we can see geography. We're going to click on the geography. So here you have lots of choices that you can look at. So this block information, I'm not familiar with. I just saw this for the first time. So I'm interested in knowing more about this. So today we're going to talk about the census tract, and then maybe I'll have some more information for you next week about how to use this block one. But census tract is what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to click on that. And then again, we're talking about Chicago, in my example, I'm talking about Chicago, but please use whatever city you're interested in. So once we go to geography, we click census tract, we find our state, Illinois. And then here we're going to find our county. So find your own county where you want your county to be. Chicago is in Cook County, so we're going to just do Cook County. Loading, loading, loading. There are a lot of county tracts in Cook County. So even though whatever county you choose, there's going to be a lot of tracks because it's divided really small. But actually for this activity, click all of them. And then we're going to close this window. Don't worry, the steps are there and I will go through it again. And instead of all and tables, we're going to click on maps. So there's a lot of, you'll get familiar with all the things that pop up and the things that are in your way and the filters that are there, and you can move all of those things. So you can see if I zoom all the way out, you can see the whole state of Illinois and the whole country is divided into these little tracks. So you can see Chicago's very concentrated. We're going in. So how we do this is to find the tracks is a little tedious, and maybe this is what the block information is building on us. But we are going to zoom in all the way, keep zooming in. If you're like, wait, how do I zoom? Don't worry, we can talk about that. And you're just gonna find your street, and you're gonna find where your service area is. So I'm trying to find, I don't know. So for example, we're in Chicago. If we're on, we can look at for the street, and we have Pershing right here, 29th. So if we're going to talk about Berwyn or maybe Morton College, so we're on Pershing in Cicero, we're going to look for some of these areas and look for your streets. And then you'll see it's track number 3511. You'll write that down. You'll keep track of which tracks are in your area. So again, these steps are here. So if you save these track numbers, if you spend today and you're like, oh, this is so annoying, I hate doing this, and then you get the 5 track numbers in your service area, write them down and put them in a safe place so you don't have to do it all the time. These aren't going to change, but they are going to be hard to find, and they're just arbitrary numbers that are going to be hard to remember. So once you have these track numbers, so say for example, let's go here. I gotta turn off my camera again. So I'm going to use, just for this example, I'm going to use track 3511 and 8396. So 3511 and 8396. Okay. So I'm going to, if I'd like to search by track. So now we're doing some prep work by finding these tract numbers. But next year, you can say, I need data for our grant. Oh, I have to look at the map and I have to do all these things. No, you don't. You can just search by those numbers and go directly to that information. So how we're going to do that again is we're going to go to the website. Again, these steps are here. The tutorial is there for you as well. We're going to type in our, instead of typing in here, we're actually going to click, and sometimes it doesn't show up automatically, but it is there. Or if you click on here, use advanced search. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, everybody. Hold on. That was my work phone. Can you use boundaries such as streets even if they cut through tracks? Yeah, so you would just use, if it cuts through your tract, all you need to do is just use more than one. And that's okay. Just use all the tracks that your area is touching, because that will all be included. So in the first training, we did this in person, and people just mapped out, like circled the areas where their areas were. And so it kind of helped them find the map. So you can print it out and do that too. So instead of going to, so instead of clicking on the search bar and going through those steps, we're actually going to click advanced search so that we can go through here. And here we're going to click on geographies, and we're going to choose tract. And again, I have my numbers written down. So here on the left-hand side, it says no filter, advanced service, advanced search, geography. Now we're going to click on census tract. You're going to choose the state, the county, and the tracts you need. So if you remember, we went through this. We went through Illinois, and in this example, we did Cook County, and then I chose all of the counties. But now I'm just going to look for the ones that I want, which is 3511. I'm just searching, searching, searching. And can I just type this in? Yeah, but just in case, I want you to see how the long way is, in case you forget. So 3511, I want that one, and I want 8396. Come on. 8396. So you're like, this is so annoying, I'm never going to do this. But you only have to do it the one time to look for them. So 83, and these numbers are so arbitrary that you would never. Okay, I should have picked a smaller number. What is it? Okay, great. And then we're going to click search. So now here is all the information we need. So we didn't type in a topic, but we can add a topic. But now we can search commuting characteristics by sex if we wanted to for these two areas. So if we click on this table, now we're going to see here's track 1. Here's the first track we picked, and here's the other track we picked. So if you have maybe 3 or even more than that tracks in your service area, you would just have the table go really, really long and you would just see, but it gives you the total, and then you can look in each specific area. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility on finding the things. So you can see, I didn't even know they had this table. You can see how people drive. If they carpooled, they walked. This is cool, but this really doesn't, it might not help our work here. But thinking about once you have those tracks, you can search specifically. So now the data you're looking, you're not adding things together. You're not trying to calculate all these different areas. It's all there on the table for you. So now you just have to update your numbers every year once you get, once as numbers change in the data. So the numbers will be, okay, great. So do I have any, so those of you that are playing around with this now, how is everybody feeling? Maybe you can give me an emoji, or you can give me some kind of indication that people are feeling okay, or you're feeling overwhelmed. How are you feeling at this point? Could you get tracks based on zip code? Oh, this camera. Got some thumbs up. So zip code is different than tracks. You can search by zip code, but so you can do it that way. Yeah, you're definitely gonna have to practice, and it'll get easier once you are looking for the things you know. And we're gonna have a chance right now to practice in groups, so you can have a little bit more feedback. You can go by zip code, but zip code sometimes doesn't give you the exact information that you need, because maybe you work in one part of the zip code that needs a specific need. And, you can ask SOS to be like, yes, I know that this zip code has a higher English level, but this tract has a big population of immigrants that aren't really included in the rest of the zip code. And that's why we need this ESL program or this ABE program. So thinking about just how specific you can get. So you can stop at any point. Track is like the most specific, but you can stop. But the most specific data is best for these grants, because it's really don't give your money to anyone else, give it to me because of this specific situation, right? And yes, we want money to go to everyone, but just so we know. So for those of us that are still in the call, I want to give an opportunity for us to go work on this and figure out some tracks in real time. So I'm going to put you in groups. Once you're in the group, if you decide to work alone, that is fine. But I want to put people in groups. So, oh yes, and I love Tom's suggestion. You can ask your local library. They know how to do it too. So you can definitely ask them, do this for me, and they can. So for those of you that are like, wait, you're doing a whole training and librarian can do it for me? Yes, but librarians are busy and librarians can't do it last minute. So if you want some practice, and it's good to know, about your population anyway. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and just for the opportunity to get to know some other people, to ask some questions. And if you aren't able to participate, that's okay. There's, again, we're all at work, but what I'd like you to do is choose an organization if you'd like to work together and try to find the tracks for that organization. Try to show what. Okay, so how did that feel? Some of you were like, oh, it's fine. And some of you were, but once we went over once we clicked that all counties, all tracks in the county button, I feel like we solved a lot.
Yeah, so our group went a little specific for Enlace and tried to get all of the areas like around there. So we like it was hard to find where I was and how to like navigate the map.
Yes, it's very annoying, but a lot of us have done a lot of complaining to the Census Bureau that they should make that easier. And in the meantime, yeah. But now hopefully you can figure out Enlace's area and keep those track numbers, so then you can just search, get those numbers, and you don't have to do the map every time. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I wrote them down.
Oh, good. Good. Any other thoughts, feelings about this? A lot of people said they need to play around more. Yes, this is definitely an introduction.
Yes, need to play around.
Yeah, I have to play more with it because this is something new for me. So, you know, I'm kind of excited about it, but yeah, it's challenging, but it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird new website, but it'll be easy once you. Yeah, no problem. Oh my God, is that really true? Have an amazing time. Congratulations. So congratulations to Renee and girlfriend having a baby. So this is for those of you that are thinking, okay, great, I have this data, but now what do I do with it? Like mentioning playing around with it, because there's a lot of steps you don't need if you just find what area you need. Like I gave you general information, but you don't have to search for education or whatever. You can just search for what you need. And we're going to be talking more about this in the next. Yes, Tom, thank you for that. It's a lot better than it used to be. So I'm glad that we're just kind of emphasizing more. They think that people are using this website now, which is great. Because I think before they maybe just thought it was internal use only or something. It was very confusing. So the training we're doing next week, if you haven't already signed up, is using data in narrative. So this is where we're going to take this data and we're going to put it into paragraphs for our grant writing. So rather than just, listing data numbers or just kind of linking to things, we're going to say like, why is this important and what does this mean? And so that's when we'll talk about things like, for those of you that are like, I couldn't find my specific area, or my area is so big, or, it looks like the English level is really high, like the education level is really high in my area, but I know this ABE program is really important. So like, how do I tell this story, even though the data says it's not really a story? So that's what we're going to talk about next week. And we'll talk about kind of making the data work for you, because it's just numbers. So how do you make it work for you and tell the story of your program in a specific way? That's just an hour. It's just going to be like this. We're going to be talking. We'll have some group time, but no stress. I know it's during work. And then at the end of the month, there's going to be, well, in between, there's going to be a lot of more trainings. And I don't know if Tom or Beth would like to talk about them since you're here. No pressure. I didn't ask you to do this until now.
No, not a thing. So on the 14th, I'll be doing one on target audience and need. And that's where you take all this data that you've been gathering that Katie's been showing you, and that's when you pull it in and you put in your target audience and needs section and make the argument that it is crucial that your program be funded. And it's literally an argument that you're making. And so that's why you want to combine data with an argument and to show how important it is to the program be funded so that it can help out your area. And then Beth will be doing one on, and I don't know, would you like to speak to that? Okay, Mark Schaefer will do on the 16th on outcomes, writing outcomes, methods and evaluations. And then Beth will be doing one later in the month on project description.
So it's grant writing season.
That's on the 28th. She'll be writing the project description. And again, these are for the Secretary of State literacy grants. not so much. I mean, if you're a program just coming looking how to get data and you don't intend on writing a grant for the Secretary of State's office, then these webinars that Beth, Mark, and I are putting on are probably not for you.
Right. So anything from LiteracyWorks is open to open to whatever, but it sounds like, yeah, if it's Secretary, if you don't know what the Secretary of State's grant is, then probably those will be kind of confusing and boring for you. And then to end our beautiful grant writing month, we'll be just talking about general persuasive writing. And as like Tom was talking about, if you like kind of struggle with like, you obviously care about your work and you want it funded, but maybe it's hard to articulate that in this writing style. So if you want some support, just kind of talking about how to make people, how to make that argument, that's what we'll be talking about then. So we'll kind of take it all together. So before we close, and thank you, Tom, for sharing those about those.
Oh, you're welcome.
I wanted to just have a second for self-reflection on this, because a lot of this is new. A lot of people mentioned like not knowing about this tool before, just having to play around with it. So there is still a lot that we need to learn. So I just want you to take a second. You can chat, you can write it in the chat if you'd like to share with the group, or you can just put it in your head. I want you to think about these two questions, like what else do you need to know about using data and grant writing? What's left? What else do you need some support with? If you want me to support you, you can put it in the chat so I know, but if you want to keep it in your heart, that's okay too. But then I also want you to think about who are you going to share this information with today, the information that you learned here about the American Community Survey, about this Explore Census Data website, about tracked numbers. Who are you going to tell this to? Because one of the biggest things in our field is we don't share information a lot, and we're very, we can be really siloed, and only one person can be in charge of this. So who are we going to share it with? Even if it's a future person, where are we going to write this down? So consider that before you leave, so you have a plan on what you're going to do with this information, knowing that I'm going to send you these slides so you can add that to wherever you keep your tracked numbers and keep it all together. And hopefully this will be, grant writing season won't be so stressful in the future. So I am really grateful for you all putting up with my crazy camera for and all of this, but I hope I'm here if anybody has any specific questions, but I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for all your time. I'm going to stop the recording and then I'll be here if anybody needs anything. Thank you very much, everybody.